Yes, good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a beautiful Monday morning, quite bright and sunny here in Kampala, Uganda, where I do come to you live from on the 1st of December. At long last, we are into the final month of the year 2025. To be honest with you, it's not been an easy year on my part. I do not know about on your part, but for a good number of people that I know, it's not been the best of years. It's had ups and downs with many downs in that sense. But we are glad to be alive. We thank the Almighty that we're still moving on, and we hope for the best. In Kampala, it's a political season. It's a campaign season. A lot of politics is making the rounds. you know a lot of politics is dominating the affairs of the day, but also other things are happening. Football is happening. Plenty of things are ongoing, so do not lose sight of everything else during this very very busy season. But we're not here for the politics, we are here for the football, and that's what brings us here today, to discuss what did transpire in the course of the weekend, because a lot happened. A lot happened, much to our surprise, much to our expectation, much to our disappointment, depending on where you stand, depending on where you look at things from, depending on what side of what side of the dice you roll it for. So really, it's going to be really rather it's going to be rather interesting to see how things go on from now. And I mean, Real Madrid struggled and yet recorded another consecutive draw, a third consecutive draw. I mean, they will be happy they are not getting beat, but they will be disappointed with themselves that they have had to draw 3 games in a row against Girona, against Elche, against Rayo Vallecano. So, in as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned, they are winless in the last 3. And yet, in the UEFA Champions League itself, they were very unconvincing in their victory against Olympiacos, the one that came by 4 goals to 3. So, that scoreline tells you some of their struggles. I thought, given Girona's bad form, poor run of results, this season things are not going for them. They do find themselves within that relegation zone, that Real Madrid would sort of have it their way, but that wasn't the case really. And to say it's disappointing could be an understatement, but disappointing to who? Of course, to their fans. Hi, Just. Good morning. Good to have you on the podcast. Anmol67, type Anmol Company on Google. Thank you. Bad boy. Oh, Badu Boy. Is it Badu Boy or Bad Boy? Good morning. Nice to have you on the broadcast. For those of you that are just joining us, kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. In case you're new here, like I said, my name is Robert K. Sakos, and I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where we are streaming from this beautiful morning, and it's 34 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. Here in Kampala, bright and sunny as you'd love it on any given day. But the temperatures these days have been a bit crazy. They've been a bit crazy. So Football Tribe is a football channel, as you can, the name is sort of self-explanatory. It's a community of football fans, for the fans, by the fans, coming together to discuss football matters. So please do join us for the conversation. Man United were surprising in their victory in a way. I say surprising because the Selhurst Park is not an easy side to go. It's also because Crystal Palace were losing their 3rd game of the season. So that tells you much about them, that after 12 games, they had only lost 2, and now they've lost 3. Apologies, just trying to have audios tested, making sure everything does check out. So really, then Liverpool did return to winning ways at long last, and there was an unusual goal scorer unusual in the context of this season, unusual in the context of Liverpool, but a very usual face in as far as the Premier League is concerned. If the last two seasons are anything to go by, that was Alexander Isak. So we'll be looking at that as well. As Liverpool won their seventh Premier League game of the season, and it's like I keep saying, it's always interesting to see some of these players live to the billing, live to the expectations. Of course, Alexander Isak is yet to live to the billing, given how much he cost Liverpool in a deal that was worth under 125 million pounds. It's a name that we've discussed one too many times on here, but this morning we will be discussing the fact that greetings from North Korea. From North Korea, do they even have access to YouTube in North Korea? I don't want to believe so. I mean, just the other day, I was watching a video by Mr. Who is the Boss reviewing two phones from North Korea. And the kind of censorship that North Korea gets is, I don't know how to even define it, is quite mind-boggling. Really. So, is it officiality? Something? Hi, good morning. So, really, in that sense, but this morning we're saying no more hiding. Chelsea are officially in the title race. And the other question is, can Liverpool put on a good run? Now, again, let's start with Liverpool, because I think it's only just that we start with the reigning champions. It's only just that we get started this conversation with the reigning champions. They are the ones. They are the ones with the ball. Everybody is trying to steal it from them. In other words, they have the trophy. So everybody else is trying to chase them. Yesterday, there were 2-0 victory, 2-0 winners against West Ham at the London Stadium, where Alexander Isak got off the mark for his Premier League campaign in the Liverpool colours when he scored at the hour mark. A very, very brilliant goal, by the way, because I thought the way in that sort of small space, the way he takes the ball and near the post to beat Alfonso Areola was typical of a striker, was typical of his quality. Very, very impressive goal, in my opinion. And he scores to give Liverpool the lead. And in the 92nd minute, or the second minute of stoppage time, Cody Gakpo, who had provided the assist for the earlier goal, did get off the mark himself, scoring to make it 2-0, as Liverpool kept a clean sheet. That's very important to note. But it's a game that finished with West Ham being reduced to 10 men following Lucas Paqueta's sending off in the 84th minute. I mean, he lost his head for a second there. And we understand players are passionate and everything like that, but there's something as a little too much. And I thought Gerard Bowen did not do enough, because usually when your teammate are trying to get themselves in that kind of situation, it falls upon you, it dawns upon you, you as captain, you as fellow teammates, to drag him away from the referee, because we know these things can happen. And West Ham are going to have to play the next couple of games without him, and that's the unfortunate bit. So the question is, can Liverpool put on a good run? And particularly, we say good run, not just in all competitions, but particularly in the Premier League, where things have not been really, really on their side. We know that they've lost 6 games out of 13, this being their 7th victory. But the victories for Liverpool have sort of come far between in recent times, because you have to go back to the day they beat up against Aston Villa for their 6th victory of the season. And sorry, for you to learn, and that was possibly on what? That was on March the 10th. So then they went and lost the subsequent 2 games before winning. Before winning here, because in the subsequent games, they lost to Man City, then they lost to Nottingham Forest, and now they do return to winning ways. Pedri says, no more hiding. Chelsea won't win the Premier League. I'm not saying they will win it. I'm saying they are officially in the title race. Chelsea have been dark in the conversation, and we're going to get deep into that one. In that, Arsenal, Manchester City are the only contenders. Pedri does contend, or at least predicts in his view of things. So, Can Liverpool now put on a good run? And I do not say this because they've gone on to win that, that sort of one game. It's easy to look at it as just one game that they've won. A person will ask, what is it different from their victory against Aston Villa? Because after that, they also went and beat up against Real Madrid in the UEFA Champions League and still could not put on a good run in the Premier League. All those answers are valid. But I want to look at it this way, because every time a team is struggling, we know for a fact that all you seek for is that motivation that takes you to the next game. And for example, present day, like I said, Real Madrid have drawn 3 consecutive games in as far as in as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned, against Vallecano, against Elche, and Girona. Now, they are still looking for that inspiration that carries them through what looks to be a bad spell, what looks to be a blip of form for themselves, because I thought they had done really, really well. I don't know, they would admire to be Barcelona, not in terms of how they concede, but in terms of how they quickly bounce back, because Barcelona has been the kind of team so far this season, particularly in the Spanish La Liga, that, if they get beat, if they draw here, they're going to pick themselves up really, really fast. Pedri says, okay, why don't you say Aston Villa are also in the title race? They have the same amount of points as Chelsea. Well, the season is a marathon. And again, we're going to just try all those things, or the questions, or the statements that we're putting out there. Trust me, it is with good reason. I'll be giving you mine in just a bit. But in terms of what comes up next for Liverpool is that in midweek, that will be on Wednesday, they're going to be at home against Sunderland before traveling away to Leeds United, and then return home to play Brighton and Hove Albion. Then they will play away to Spurs and then Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, when I look at the next set of 5 fixtures, if I'm Liverpool, there are at least 3 must-win fixtures. There are 3 must-win fixtures. Must-win based on their form, not on their status as reigning champions. One, at the tail end of that one, is on the 27th of December against Wolverhampton Wanderers, away to Tottenham Hotspurs. We know Tottenham Hotspurs don't do well at home. They're really, really struggling at home. We just saw them get beat by Fulham by 2-1. Kevin Tete and Harry Wilson, scoring in that game. Muhammad Kudus picked what turned out to be a mere consolation for the home side. And then the Leeds game, that comes next weekend on the 6th of December. So for me, those 3, if I'm Liverpool and I'm looking at my next schedule of fixtures, in as far as the Premier League is concerned, those are must wins. So that's 9 points. Out of a possible 15, you have Sunderland, you have Brighton. Now, the advantage, Sunderland is at home. Is it a winnable game? Any game for a team like Liverpool, and with all their quality, must be a winnable game. They must look at it as a winnable game. So it's a winnable game. But in context of their recent form and what Sunderland are capable of doing, or what they have shown they are capable of doing, it's going to be a difficult one. So, in other words, if you Liverpool, do not get beat at all costs. For the first time this season, at least draw a game. At least draw a game, So that's what I will say. And then when you get to the Brighton game, it's also a home game. Now, Brighton are a bit of a bogey side, very difficult to go about. They're the kind of team that can beat up against any team in the Premier League, and convincingly so, but also can get beat. So if you think you cannot win the 2 games against Sunderland and Brighton, and I single them out because of their difficulty, and I'm not saying that Leeds is easy because we saw what they tried to do against Manchester City. I'm not saying Tottenham are easy because it's going to be an away game, but I'm saying what makes them easy is their poor form at home, Tottenham. What makes Leeds beatable is that they are a beatable team. They're among the bottom 3, and they're that for a reason. Wolves is bottom of the table as we speak, with only 2 points after 13 games. Even a swap of managers to bring in Rob Edwards is yet to bear fruit. They've not had that new manager bounce. Yes, yesterday they sort of had a good fight, but they could not finish that good fight with the result. So Pedri is giving his submission. He's saying I would go. He thinks Liverpool will lose against Sunderland by 2 goals to 1. He thinks they will draw against Leeds United in a 1-all draw, and he thinks Brighton will beat up against Liverpool by 3 goals to 1. That's his prediction. How about Tottenham? How about Wolverhampton Wanderers? Because that's the set of 5 games that we are looking at. But thank you so much for those predictions. Really, whether they are justified in the sense of being objective, or perhaps out of spite for Liverpool, we do not know with absolute certainty. But at least he's given us his views on that run of fixtures, for which we are suggesting that Liverpool should be looking at them as very, very winnable fixtures. So I'm thinking he thinks Liverpool, Tottenham will go 2-2. I mean, that's not a good report card. But bear in mind that Liverpool have not drawn a game this season. There's no single day they've drawn a game. They either get beat or they beat you. It's been that simple. If they find themselves at the losing end of a game, they either fight to win it or fight to lose it. That's just what they do. So I do not envision many draws, but I'm still calling for them either way, really, to say Liverpool. I mean, struggle and pick up a point, really. You cannot go about a game and saying, if we can't win it, we should just lose. And I'm not saying that that's what they tell themselves, but that's what their results suggest, really, in that sort of sense. So I think for me, it's that time for Liverpool to put on a good run. Now, as we make those arguments, let's forget not that Liverpool is going to have engagements in the UEFA Champions League. And on paper, their squad looks a bit narrow for me when you assess the kind of options that they always have on the bench. Yes, Federico Chiesa, the other day, Mohamed Salah was on the bench, and he does look strong. Georgie Mamadashvili, but overall, compared to other teams, it's not the best of benches that there is. So, so for me, I think now would be an ideal time for Liverpool to put on that good run. Now would be an ideal time for Liverpool to do just that. Anyways, so we'll leave the conversation at that. But like I said, midweek on Wednesday, in one of the late kickoffs at 11:15, Liverpool will be at home against Sunderland. I think it will be a very, very interesting game to catch up on. Then quickly, going back to the topic, and it says no more hiding. Chelsea are officially in the title race. Now, before I get to digest Pedri's comments on the same topic, let me give you my views as to why I say no more hiding. Chelsea are officially in the title race. If we go back to the start, prior to the start of the season, I did make my season table predictions. And whereas in my prediction, and I still stand by it, although nervously, by the way, I must admit, sort of living on walking by the tip of my toes and sort of biting my fingernails that the manifestation does come true. I predicted that Arsenal will finish at the top of the Premier League table. My prediction had been that Liverpool will finish second, by the way, they're not so far off. When you look at the difference, the point difference between second and eighth team on the Premier League log, because it's Manchester City second and Liverpool are eighth, the difference is of only 4 points. And that's how close the gap is this season. That's why this season is very, very difficult. Because in between there, you have teams that have sort of squeezed themselves within the top 8. And when I say squeeze themselves in there, you're looking at teams like Crystal Palace, you're looking at teams like Sunderland, teams like Brighton. And I'm not saying, excuse me, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be there, but I'm saying ordinarily, those are not the teams that you think would be in that cohort on any given day. Where you have Brighton, you'd expect it was Newcastle. Where you have Sunderland, you'd expect it would be Tottenham. But that's not the case, And by the way, Crystal Palace are in 9th place. So the point gap between first and second is 5. But the point difference gap between second and 8th is only 4 points. That's how narrow a gap is. So Liverpool are only 3 points off of the top 4. Only 3 points off of the top 4, and yet we are saying Liverpool are shambolic. And yes, their results have been shambolic, by the way. There's no hiding from that. But I've always argued this case, and I will keep arguing the same case, that mathematically, Liverpool are far from done. They just need to put on a good run of results. And I've always reminded people, this kind of Premier League table, you only need to falter in 2 games, and your opponents are winning those 2 consecutive games. That's when you will know how small a gap it is, although by the measure of the table, it looks far big. I'll give you an example. When you look at a team like Arsenal, who are leading the table, and a team in 9th place, it's only 10 points that separate them. Now, in no context am I arguing that suddenly Crystal Palace are going to win all their games, really Arsenal will be dropping points and then Crystal Palace catch up with them. But 10 points is a result of 4 games, 3 victories, 1 draw, and that's it. So in other words, we know the same way Real Madrid have drawn 3 consecutive games, even Arsenal can draw 3 consecutive games. In other words, in any case, if you look at their last 3 Premier League games, they've drawn 2 and won 1. That in itself is a blip. Now, Black November, as it's been traditionally been referred to in the context of Arsenal and the overall business community, is out of the way for the Arsenal. The question is, can they bounce back to winning ways? Because they need that more than anything. The next game is going to be against Brentford. But reverting back to the Chelsea topic. So I was simply reminding you what my predictions were. I predicted Chelsea. I said Liverpool would come second, and they're looking a little far from that, although the points gap is only 4, and they could still bounce back and finish second. I predicted Chelsea to be third, and Manchester City to come fourth. And part of my assessment is, I know we made these arguments before, and they are valid within their own context or within the context within which you bring them, that Enzo Maresca may not be expected to win the Premier League title because he is only in his second year at Chelsea. In comparison, usually that they make is to Mikel Arteta. And you can also make the comparison with Arne Slot. But if Arne Slot has won it in his debut campaign with Liverpool, why can't Enzo Maresca win it in his second season? That's the question, you know. Whereas it's valid to argue that he is still fresh in the Chelsea project, it is also valid to say that it is okay to demand him a Premier League title. And Pedri made this comment, and he said, for him, he thinks Arsenal and Manchester City are the only teams in the title race. He says, okay, why don't you say Aston Villa are also in the title race? They have the same amount of points as Chelsea. Now, yes, that's true. Mathematically, that's true, without a single ounce of doubt. But Aston Villa have not spent £2 billion in the last 3 years on players. They've not spent that. Chelsea have spent that. And whether you want to make the flimsy statement of Chelsea have bought their way into silverware, park that aside. The fact is, they've spent money, and lots of it, to assemble a team that is capable of challenging at the very top. For those of you that can't remember, somebody put a question to me of what the best midfield was in the Premier League. And I remember at the time, we drew comparisons on 4 teams: Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester City. And in those respective midfields, at Liverpool, you have Ryan Gravenberch, McAllister, and Dominic Szoboszlai. At Chelsea, you have Moises Caicedo, you have Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer. Those are the names we did look at, but also we looked at the variations as such as they're having with Reece James, Caicedo, and Enzo Fernandez, or Andre Santos, Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, Enzo Fernandez. And you go to Manchester City, where they have Rodri, Tijan Reinders, Bernardo Silva, where you have Nico Gonzalez, Tijan Reinders, Phil Foden. Now, when you go to Arsenal, Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, Martin Odegaard. Same Arsenal, you have Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, Ebeleche Eze. Now, within all that mix, within Arsenal, they also have Christian Nogard. Now, within all that mix, you look at those components, and Chelsea have really have depth in there, in that midfield. Why? Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, Dario Esugo, Andre Santos, Enzo Fernandez. That's 5 players that can play within that pivot. Pivot 8. That's 5 players. I've left out Kopama because he's more advanced. So that's healthy enough. And even on paper, or at least by manner of play, we've seen what they are capable of doing. We saw them run Arsenal circles. We saw them run Arsenal round. Now, of course, there are other factors that you could bring into consideration, like Chelsea having had an extra day of rest, Arsenal having had a very, very difficult week, playing at home against Tottenham, playing against Bayern Munich, and then having to go away to Chelsea is no easy task, even for the biggest of teams, even if you have a strong squad, because even a strong squad still has what we define as a spine, the core members of that squad. And for Arsenal, they were without some of those core members within their team. But so, Chelsea is a very, very strong team. So, 1, last season, they finished 4th. That's for starters. 2, they have a very good manager in Enzo Maresca. Tactically, he's capable of organizing and beating up against any team in Europe. Their 3-0 victory against PSG in the FIFA Club World Cup over the summer in the United States of America was evidence of that, if you needed more. But look at how they dismissed Barcelona, arguably one of the best teams there is in Europe. Yes, Barcelona were reduced to 10 men, but look at what they did to them. Look at how they went up against Arsenal. Spectacularly, So, when you spend £2 billion, whether you have a new manager who is only a day old, whether you are looking to appoint a manager, whether you think majority of your players are young and new to the Premier League, you're a title contender. Because you do not spend £2 billion in a space of 3 years just to be a participant. You don't do that. So, for me, those are some of the factors that make Chelsea a title contender. You look at their squad, and by the way, Robert Sanchez is a very, very improved guy. In fact, he has, I think, 6 clean sheets. 1 behind David Raya, who has 7. Really, Arsenal considered their 7th goal of the season, sorry. So, you look at their backline, and Wesley Fofana and Trevor Chalobah have really, really picked up well. Malo Gusto was very, very largely untroubled yesterday. Marco Correa, arguably one of the best left backs, if not the very best that there is in the Premier League. We talked about their midfield. You look at their attack. Pedro Neto, William Estaval, quite a revelation of a youngster, only 18 years of age. You have Joao Pedro, you have Liam Delap, you have Jamie Gittens, you have Alejandro Garnacho. That's a hell of firepower in terms of their attackers, Yes, many are averagely young, but they're very, very, very good players. We cannot say they're not title contenders because they're young. Just simply on that. Do they have the experience of winning a league title? Obviously not. But the experience about winning a league title, we get to see that at the tail end of the season. In other words, if you go by your games winning, by the time we take that Premier League corner, who knows? You've already left the other experienced title contenders that even if you falter, they're not going to be able to catch you. In that sort of sense, really. So for me, Chelsea, and even when you go within Chelsea forums, a lot of them are saying, we're not really in the title race. It's for Man City, it's for Arsenal for the taking, it's for Liverpool. They sort of they just want to creep up on you, If you go back to the 2024 season, when Liverpool go and finish, I think Liverpool finished 3rd in that campaign. When they finished third, they finished with a tally of 82 points. There were 7 points adrift of Arsenal and 9 points adrift of the eventual champions, Manchester City. Now, guess what happened? Last season, they won the league title with 84 points. In other words, they only added a tally of 2 points from their previous season finish, and they clinched the league title. So really, keep that in mind. So if you're Chelsea, and who in that very season, under Mauricio Pochettino, finished with 63 points, and were sixth on the Premier League club, which for me I thought wasn't too bad. Look at what they were able to do last season in Maresca's debut campaign. One, they finished with 69 points, 6 better than the previous campaign. Now, it's his second season. They have the motivation of having won the FIFA Club World Cup. They won the Conference League. Yes, the Conference League is a bit of an underdog kind of tournament, but it is still a win for them. You can't take that away from them. If we go by that calculator, they finished about 25 points adrift of the eventual champion? Is it? No, actually 15. Not 25, only 15 points. So if they can improve this season with 15 points, which looks increasingly likely that they can do that, then tell me why they cannot compete for the Premier League title. If last season's title winner finished with a tally of 84 points. So for me, they are really, really, really capable. They are really, really capable. A number of factors point in their favor. And having that kind of quality in your squad is what gives you the advantage. Mikel Arteta knows it. Guardiola knows it. Is it too difficult to see for the rest of us? I do not want to think so. So yeah, officially, Chelsea are in the title conversation. Can they deal with the pressure of being in the title conversation for as long as they are not the ones leading the table? There's a way, and by the way, that in itself, not being looked at that way puts you sort of out of the crossfires of the media, that you're not scrutinized as much. Man United will be scrutinized for their underperformances because they are arguably one of the biggest clubs there is in the UK and in the world. So whether they are 13th, if United are 13th, we're debating why are they that low. If they are within where they are and upwards, we're saying, they're bouncing back. But somehow we go meet on Chelsea. And I'm not saying that's where I would draw the line. But it's like when you're in the kind of position that Chelsea are in, you're going to be under less scrutiny from the media, in that sort of sense. But for me, I believe without an ounce of doubt that they are well within the title race, at best on results. And then when you look at their next run of fixtures, these are very, very winnable fixtures in comparison to some of their opponents. So, one, they play Leeds away. That is at Elland Road. Then they travel to the Vitality Stadium. Then they play Everton at home. They play Newcastle away. And Aston Villa. Now, that's no easy run of games. But look at the current form of all those teams in comparison to Chelsea, who are unbeaten in the last 9 games across all competitions, winning 5 and drawing 4. Really. Leeds should be a winnable game. Bournemouth won't be easy, but still a winnable game. Bournemouth have been off of form for a bit of a while now. Everton, we saw them literally look shambolic against Newcastle. It's like they hadn't beaten up against Man United on Monday. They were too poor against Newcastle. And the Newcastle mm, have had that kind of start to the season. It's not even 50-50. It's a 40-60 in terms of how good they've had it. And in any case, their status on the Premier League table says just as much by the virtue of the fact that they are 13th with 18 points. Like I said, ordinary Newcastle would be somewhere between 4th and 7th. But that's not the case. That's not the case. It's a glove. Don't worry. Anyways, so really, so when I look at the next set of games, of course, Aston Villa will be difficult. Newcastle won't be easy. Everton choose their days. Can be very difficult. Can be easy. But I still would fancy Chelsea over Everton. So really, they're going to have a good run of games. If they can win all 5, well and good. If they can manage to pick 10 points out of a possible 15, won't be bad either. It would leave them in a very, very strong position. So for me, Chelsea are without doubt title contenders. At least that's how we should be looking at them. That's how we should be assessing them. That's how we should be scrutinizing everything they do. Because they've spent loads and loads of money, and now they ought to come good. They can't keep ducking the conversation. They can't keep ducking the conversation. Anyways, so those are my thoughts on Chelsea. But just to sum up what the weekend did deliver, it kick-started with a 3-1 victory for Brentford over Burnley. Manchester City scrapped out a 3-2 victory against Leeds United, with Phil Foden scoring a brace in that one, including the later winner in the first minute of stoppage time. But Erling Haaland did not score. The Sunderland bounced back from going 2-0 down to win 3-2 against a 10-man AFC Bournemouth. Newcastle thumped Everton at the Hill Dixon Stadium, 4-1. Fulham went away to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and beat them by 2-1. While Crystal Palace at home lost by similar scoreline against Manchester United, 2-1. Aston Villa through Boubacar Kamara beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 1-0. Wales Brighton beat up against Nottingham Forest by 2-0. Same applies to Liverpool winning away to West Ham, while Chelsea and Arsenal, the game finished in a 1-1 draw. Now, speaking of Arsenal-Chelsea, that is the worst performance I've seen from Arsenal this season. That was bad. Really, really bad. And I do not say that lightly, because guess what? Richard James was still man of the match, even with Chelsea being down to 10 men, ever since the 38th minute when Moises Caicedo gets sent off. So really, and I understand they had UEFA Champions League, Chelsea had a day's rest, but their energy levels were so low. Yes, they were missing key players. Their preferred centre back pairing of William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes missed that fixture, and it was Christian Mosquera alongside Pierre Hincap starting there. So they looked a bit rusty. Carafiori was returning to the starting 11, having started off the bench against Bayern Munich. Jurriën Timber, by the 70th minute mark, looked overly exhausted and tired. And for me, I was calling for Mikel Arteta to withdraw him. He refused, stubborn of him. Not that he was hearing me, but he looked at that midfield: Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, Eze, Gabriel Martinelli, Bukayo Saka, and Mikel Merino. I mean, they just looked tired. They went like their legs had been like they had bricks or stones tied to their legs. It was the kind of game that was almost muted in the sense of that Arsenal energy. That's how very poor it was. That's how very unconvincing it was. Because I thought once Chelsea went down to 10 men, by the time Chelsea go down to 10 men, they were by far the better team. And like we said against Man United, there's that cliche that you do not want to play against 10 men. You'd rather play against 11. Why? Because against 10 men, everybody doubles up their effort to try and fill the void that is being omitted by their player who's just been sent off. It may not always feel that way. It may not always work that way. But that's a fact. That's a fact. So Trevor Chalobah and Mikel Merino were the goal scorers in the 48th minute and the 59th minute, respectively. And once Arsenal got the equalizer, I thought maybe there's something on here that they're going to fight their way back through the game. But all the chances they managed to create remained fruitless. Bukayo Saka was too selfish for nothing. I felt he did a little too much. I felt in me that perhaps it's because he had walked on the pitch as the captain before, of course, handing over the armband to their captain, Martin Odegaard, when he officially comes on. But in so many cases, when he drove inside to his left, you thought, oh, he's going to conjure up something, make a good assist, float in the ball, and he decided to go for himself, and it just did not pay off. It just did not work out, So, like I said, Arsenal will be happy with their results in the context of the whole week. But in the context of that one game, it must have felt like a defeat. Because, like I said, Chelsea were down to 10 men. And the mere fact that they could not bounce back, fight their way through, is testament to how good Chelsea are also. Yes, Arsenal were weak, but Chelsea were that good. Anyways, do let me know what your thoughts are on those things, on those topics, and we'll continue to engage. For those of you that watch our live broadcasts long after they've ended, we do not take your time for granted, but I want to wrap it here and wish you, before I wrap it up here, we have some games coming in midweek. And I thought I should give you a recap. Of course, we'll get to digest this tomorrow, perhaps in the late night broadcast today at 11 p.m. Tomorrow morning, we will and going throughout the week. But Bournemouth will be on Tuesday. Bournemouth at 10:30 p.m. will be at home against Everton. Fulham will be at home against Manchester City, while Newcastle at 11:15 p.m. will be at home against Tottenham Hotspur. That's on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Arsenal at 10 p.m. will be at home against Brentford. Same time, Brighton will take on Aston Villa. Burnley will be at home against Crystal Palace. Wolverhampton Wanderers will be at home against Nottingham Forest. While at 11:15, Leeds United will entertain Chelsea. Whereas Liverpool will take on Sunderland. So and then it will all be wrapped up. That's our match day 14 on a Thursday, the 4th of December, when Man United take on West Ham. So, as the week goes by, we will be digesting those fixtures. We will be giving you the analysis. We will be looking at our predictions. So do not miss out on all that, because it's going to be coming your way. Like I said, these 3 weeks post the November international break, possibly going into a month and a half, are going to be a very, very hectic period for many of your teams. They are going to test their squad depth. They are going to test their resilience, and things in that line, because games are going to be coming thick and fast. Literally every 2 days, you're going to be seeing a game of football for some of these clubs. So every 2 games. So Arsenal played on Sunday. They have Monday, Tuesday for recovery. Go again on Wednesday. Then after Wednesday, they'll have Thursday, Friday. Go again on Saturday in the early kickoff. Moreover, so it's going to be a marathon. And particularly for teams that are still in Europe, particularly for teams that are still in the quarterfinals of the EFL Cup. So, anyways, let me know what your thoughts are on all those issues, and I'll keep responding to your comments. I will come back and discuss your comments here. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure for me. It's a 10:15 a.m. So allow me wish you a blessed day and a blessed new month and a blessed new week. All. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now. It's been a pleasure.